Yes, everyone, you know what time it is. It's your boy Jack, Dave, and Kieran here at the Irish Hotspur. And in this video, we're going to be going through the three relegated teams. We'll be picking out players that we think Spurs should consider bringing in this summer to begin our big rebuild. And if you do enjoy this video here, everybody, feel free to smash that like button. Leave a comment down below which relegation players you think are worth pursuing this summer, and maybe which relegation players you think might be worth bringing into Big Ange's team. But we're going to start first with a player who's been continuously linked with the likes of Tottenham over the last few months, and that is James Maddison. He's 26 years of age, valued around 55 million euros, according to the likes of Transfermarkt. And with over 2,000 minutes played last year in the Premier League, he grabbed 19 goal contributions. That James Maddison is one of the best, you could say, in the Premier League compared to all wingers and creative midfielders when it comes to creating for his teammates, and as well when it comes to watching James Maddison. You can definitely see it with your own eyes, but you certainly can see it through the stats because he ranks in the top percentile compared to others in his position when it comes to a lot of sort of key creative sort of stats in terms of, key passes as well as shot creating actions and through balls per 90 minutes. But Dave, he's one of the best in the league at creating for others, but is he worth that big price of around 55 million euros?
Look, it's a big outlay. It is a big outlay, but for me, it's probably about the going rate for a cam these days, someone that is creative like a Maddison. Now, look, when you look at the situation, he's got 1 year left on his contract. Will you be able to get a bit off that? I'd potentially maybe think you would, unless someone like Newcastle, rumored to be interested, come in for this guy as well. And I fear if Newcastle come in, they can offer the Champions League, so he'll probably go there. So for me, if we do want this guy, we do have to act quick because, look, we're going back to a fourth back now that Ange is going to be announced. And also, it does look like that he's going to need that sort of creative player in the team. And for me, we've been missing that since we had Christian Eriksen at this team. Someone that can just pick up the ball and unlock the door and basically just keep the pressure on while keeping possession. We're in the opposition's final third. That's been a big problem this season. So, look, Maddison, I think he's a very good player. And I look at it, does he improve Tottenham? I think he does. However, I still raise concerns over some of the attitude problems that have come out about him over his time at Leicester. But look, for me, that's one, you could put it down to just him and Rodgers not getting on, him being at Leicester so long and wanting a new challenge and sort of getting out there because he knows he's better than Leicester. So, look, I reckon you might get him for a bit cheaper than the 55 million report, especially with a year being left on his contract and them having to sell. And he is their prized asset, so it does look like he'll be the one they'll sell out of anybody.
Sounds like Dave's not questioning his ability, Kieran, but he has some concerns about the attitude.
Yeah, look, he did switch off at certain parts of the season, but when you also got 19 goal contributions, as a midfielder for your team, and then you've got strikers, like you got Jamie Vardy, who's got like 2 goals in the league and stuff. It's easy to point fingers at him and kind of go, well, you dropped off, but you also kind of got to look at elsewhere. They were 10th in the league for goals scored, so they shouldn't even be in that situation. It's the defending side that's kind of let them down. And then outside of Harvey Barnes and Maddison, you kind of look to the 3 forwards. There's players in there that haven't got minutes. Instead, they've kind of favoured Vardy, who hasn't brought that same goals tally that he has in previous seasons. So, yeah, maybe he has switched off, but at the same time, I think realistically, fingers should be pointed elsewhere in that team rather than at Maddison.
I felt like the defense really did let them down this season. Everybody, do give us your thoughts on James Maddison, whether you think he's worth the 55 million euros. If I'm going to sort of maybe decide amongst the three of us, I don't really know if he is worth all that much money, for us, to maybe bring in. I think there are plenty of creative midfielders out there you probably could get for maybe a bit cheaper. Then again, though, no questioning the talent and no questioning that he is basically what we've been needing, a guy who can take that sort of creative burden away from Harry Kane. Harry Kane's the one that normally has to drop deep, link up the play, and have to sort of basically be the sort of creative number 10 all on his own, as well as be the big number 9. And James Maddison could certainly take that burden, I think, away from him. So not questioning Spurs going after him, not questioning Spurs, seeing, the talent in him, but he could end up being a bit pricey. And if we do get into some sort of bidding war with Newcastle, I don't reckon we're going to win that sort of bidding war. And I don't expect us to really break the bank for him. And I don't know if we really should, maybe, which is potentially a controversial take.
Just one quick caveat point. I do think we have to remember and take into account that we do need to get some of the best English players around and upgrade on what we've got. You know, you have to make that quota in the league. And if we get European football back this year, we also have to make that in Europe, in Europe as well. So for me, it is about upgrading on some of the English talent that we have, because we already know it's some of the worst around.
Yeah.
And look, you know, Maddison, you know, he's one you could bring in. Personally, I'd rather bring in Pedro Gonçalves in here. But, you know, Maddison, he is English and he does help reach that quota.
Moving on to Tete. Probably haven't heard of him. Didn't really contribute very much to the likes of Leicester City this season. But if we were to be able to get him cheaply, I feel like he might be worth, 30 seconds of mentioning. He did actually record 2.45 successful take-ons per 90. And if that sounds, kind of maybe useless or not really, much information to you, that just means he was basically in the top sort of percentile of any sort of wingers or creative midfielders that taken it past his man. So while he didn't contribute many sort of goals and assists for the likes of Leicester this season, he was very good at sort of skilling past his players and being able to sort of take on his man, with any sort of, freedom. And he has a bit of pace to him. He's got a bit of sort of agility as well. Very different to the likes of a Kulusevski, but is left-footed and likes to cut inside. So if we were looking for maybe a Kulusevski alternative, creative right winger, maybe a guy who can also try to play through the middle, Tete could be worth taking a look at. But also maybe a guy that is also worth taking a look at is likes of Harvey Barnes, Kieran. And he's 25 years of age, valued around 32 million euros, according to Transfermarkt. And this last season, he scored 13 goals and assisted 1. But I feel like when you look at his stats, you can see that he definitely is good at getting shots on goal. He's in sort of the top echelon of sort of players in his position at getting shots on target. But when it comes to any sort of the creative numbers, it's not really looking too good for him when he's comparing to other players in his position. So what are your thoughts? Is he really worth 32 million euros, according to Transfermarkt, if he's not very good at creating for others?
Look, I think, if you gun by his market value, 32 million euros, that's 20 something million pounds. I think that's a fair price. But given what it would actually take to take him away from Leicester, it'd probably be a little bit north of that. I know they do have the biggest wage budget of a relegated Premier League team, but they've got a lot of financial stuff in place. They maybe don't have to sell all of their players. So I think they'll try and make big on one signing for the fee that they would probably ask for. I think, yeah, you're right, Jack. It is a little bit concerning. Looking at the stats, creatively, he's generally one that plays on the left wing as well, which is where we got Sonny. So you kind of got to question then, what do we need more? Do we need goals or do we need creativity? And, where do we need that? Do we need, creativity in the middle or wide, or do we need goals from wider in the middle? Harvey Barnes is maybe one we need less when you look at the likes of other players out there like Maddison or other players.
Harvey Barnes, Dave, kind of one of the big players for Leicester City over the years, but is he really worth, a price north of 32 million?
No, it won't be. And the reason why it'll be north of that is because they're protected by his contract. There's another few years left on it yet. Mm-hmm. But look, when I look at Harvey Barnes, for me, does he improve Tottenham? Does he offer even anything different to Tottenham to what we currently got? No, he doesn't. You've got Son, who's miles better than him, is always going to play ahead of him. You'd say that, Son is more of a lethal finisher. Okay, but is Harvey Barnes better? No, he's not. So for me, he doesn't really offer anything different to what we've already got in that position, or he doesn't improve in that position. So for me, stay away from him. I actually think he's overrated and overvalued, if you want me to be brutally honest. And I think he's been the beneficiary of having someone like Maddison there who can play them balls in behind, them key passes, etc. He reminds me a bit of Jesse Lingard under Jose Mourinho at United, where Jesse Lingard really came to the fore and his reputation was enhanced because he was just making runs off the defender's shoulders from out wide to in, and he bagged a lot of goals doing that. And look how his career has tailed out. And I feel Harvey Barnes is going to end up the same, if you want me to be brutally honest.
Whoa, the next Jesse Lingard, Harvey Barnes. But I kind of agree with you on the case that he doesn't exactly do anything differently to what Sonny does. And Sonny is elite at that sort of, position of making those runs in behind, being able to be that goal scoring winger. And you would probably say Sonny's an even better creator than really Harvey Barnes is as well. So are you getting anything really all that different? No. And I absolutely agree with what you said earlier, with James Maddison. You want to consider bringing in more, English talent, because we've really missed the ball on that one in times in the past. But Harvey Barnes, for me, not really the English sort of talent that maybe we should be looking at. We should be either looking at younger ones, through our own academy, with Mikey Moore, etc., maybe thinking about him for the future, or also just looking at maybe other young talents, across the league that maybe are worth poaching. But Harvey Barnes, 25 years of age as well. Maybe he's kind of already should be showing a bit better. I know he's not the finished player yet, but I feel like, yeah, he's showing that he's more of a goal scorer than he is a creator, and we need maybe more of a creator.
And I think as well, Jack, just to kind of add to that, with us really that we'll probably get one big signing or two big signings maximum. And like I said, well, like we've just said, where do we kind of need those reinforcements? I could agree with us going and spending big on a creative midfielder because we feel like we've lacked that ever since Eriksen's gone, and it takes some of the burden off Harry Kane and gives us an extra dimensional player to worry about creatively for other teams. But would you like to spend big on a creative player and a wide player, or just a wide player and then somewhere else? I personally wouldn't. Creatively,
Yeah.
I could understand as long as then we went and reinforced defensively. But yeah, if we went and got a winger on an expensive transfer fee, where does that leave us for the rest of our transfers?
Another talented Leicester player that is probably worth looking at is maybe Yuri Tielemans. His goals and assists are down, though, from the last seasons, and he's actually had some of the lowest numbers he's ever recorded in his whole career. He's known as a playmaker and a good creator from deep, but considering his recent form and his big letdown of a season, would Tielemans maybe be too much of a risk, Dave?
Look, this guy's a guy I've followed since he made his debut for Anderlecht. I think it was 16. I've followed him since then. And on his day, this guy can actually be a real difference maker. He can be in midfield. He can get on the ball, start playing passes. He gets stuck in. He's got a good long-range shot on him. And we know that this guy can change games when he's on form. But the problem is getting him on form. And I think Leicester fans have been really disappointed with what he's produced for them in a time of need when you really need some fight out of your players. And I think they've been really let down. It also looks like he's on a free this summer as well. For me, look, it's a risk, Jack. It's a risk, but there's a player later on I'd rather take in because he's got a better attitude and he offers something different to what we've already got in midfield. So for me, I would actually stay away from Tielemans on this one. He's not getting any younger. His attitude and his head's not in the right place. And we don't need that at Tottenham right now. We need all hands to pump. We need people that want to be there with no attitude problems and want to work hard. So for me, Tielemans is one I'd probably stay away from right now.
He does have the capacity to score the spectacular, though. I must say, this season, his two only goals or whatever they were absolute stunners. So he is capable of scoring some worldies. Another player, maybe though, worth mentioning is Iheanacho, and this is actually one that Kieran actually wanted to bring up. And I think maybe Kieran, if I'm not mistaken, you feel like Iheanacho is someone that gets maybe a bit overlooked. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, look, I just think given the minutes, especially this season at Leicester, obviously a lot of people look at the numbers as a whole at face value, 28 appearances in the league, only 5 goals, 5 assists. But when you actually consider that 17 of those have been from the bench, with an 18 minutes on average, I think it's a bit, I think it's a bit harsh to maybe judge him too much, especially when people in our fan base will give Richarlison an easy time for scoring one and making loads of appearances just because he came off the bench. But yeah, despite him being the least played forward for Leicester, he actually has more goals than all of their other strikers, and he has more assists than all of their other strikers.
Wow.
So yeah, I just think maybe he's been overlooked this season. Maybe he had a falling out with Brendan Rodgers. Maybe that's why he's not being given as much. But let's not forget 2 seasons ago he had 26 goal involvements in 25 90s. Including 19 of those in the Premier League. 12 of those in the Premier League. And he had 19 goals, 7 assists that season. So I think there is a player there. He's more of a centre forward, whereas Richarlison's an out number 9, which fits what the current mold of what we have with Harry Kane. So yeah, I think overlooked, and with a year left, could potentially go on quite a cheap deal.
Let's move on to 19th place Leeds and start with a player who's been linked with us a number of times, and that is the fellow French shot stopper Illan Meslier. And we're going to compare him to Lloris here, and his post-shot expected goal is actually worse than the likes of Lloris, and that's really not a surprise considering Leeds did concede a lot of goals, but he didn't exactly look too good, I would say, with a lot of the goals conceded. Certainly could have done a lot better. He has a worse save percentage than the likes of Lloris as well, where Meslier used to be highly rated by a lot of fans in the Premier League. But what happened to him, do you feel like, Kieran? Has his shot-stopping ability maybe been exposed? What do you feel like has gone wrong with Meslier?
I don't, I don't know. Look, a lot of the goals he concedes, obviously, my dad being a Leeds fan, I constantly hear about how crap their players are, especially this season more than ever. But with Meslier, everything just seems to go through him. I'm not sure if some of that's due to a confidence thing. Obviously, he wasn't great last season, and then he's been awful this season. And as the season's gone on, he just looks to have got worse and worse and worse, up to the point at which Big Sam dropped him the last few games. And he's 23 years old. I think maybe there's a question of, it's very good to give young players game time, but I think sometimes, just keep playing them can actually have a detriment to their development. And I think potentially, that's kind of the route that Mellier's gone, where he's kind of knocked confidence last year, and then I don't know, he's just development. He just feels like he's fallen off a cliff this year.
Dave, I mean, is he better with his feet than most, you would say, in the Premier League? Like, we do need that type of keeper, a guy that can sort of adapt to the modern game and be able to play from the back. But do you feel like his shot stopping ability is just too much of a concern?
Look, I think it's worth putting into context that he was playing behind a defence that was a lot worse than ours in that Leeds back line, as we seen at the end of last season. The goalkeeper's a lot more exposed than maybe what ours is, which is hard to believe it or not. But that's the reality of it. Look, you look at his defensive action lines outside the area. I mean, I was surprised when we see what Hugo Lloris done against Callum Wilson, against Newcastle. Of course, Meslier's going to be better there. But when you look at it, Meslier's probably played a couple more games than Hugo Lloris, but he's been a lot worse than Hugo Lloris. And for me, when I look at Meslier, look, I don't rate him as highly as other people do. I see what they talk about when it comes to this guy, but I'm not sold on him, Jack. I think he's more or less starting to become the keeper that he's more or less going to be. I don't actually think he's going to get any better.
No.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get any better either. And I feel like with his feet, he often does look convincing with the way he strikes the ball. But I feel like a lot of his passes have actually gone astray. It just looks like he's completely devoid of confidence at this moment in time. And going into sort of the shoes of Lloris is not going to exactly, I would say fill you with a ton of confidence. You're going to have to be able to swim in the deep end sort of right away. And he doesn't look like the guy that can really handle going through these dips and, these kind of bad spells of form. And I feel like, he's just a bit too fragile. Let's also remember he's practically the youngest keeper, I think, almost in Europe with the amount of minutes that he does have. Maybe a quick mention, though, from the likes of the Medford Messi. I do talk about Brendan Aronson. I do feel like he looked very good under Jesse Marsch. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there was some sort of clause in his contract that was mentioned by Fabrizio Romano recently that would say make it so that it could be cheaper to sort of go after him if we were to bring him up, to the Premier League. I think he does press really intensely, and I do feel like he has the ability to take it past his man. You could look at maybe how he embarrassed Chelsea and Koulibaly in kind of the early stages of the season, and I do feel like he has a good pass on him. I think he's kind of just a standard, traditional creative midfielder, can kind of do both parts. Maybe his finishing could do a bit of work, but if available for around 10 million, maybe 15 million, perhaps worth taking a look at because he's still quite young. And I did think, in a very intensive, sort of pressing system, and that's what maybe an Ange Postecoglou might like. Brendan Aronson could be a cheap sort of deal. But moving on to 20th place Southampton, let's start with Dave's fellow countryman, Bazunu. And we're going to compare him to Lloris as well as Meslier here. And he has a better post-shot expected goal than Meslier and has actually conceded fewer goals than him this season. But Dave, let's start with this first. Is he a better shot stopper than Lloris and Meslier?
Yeah, miles better shot stopper. Again, you got to realize he's been playing for a team that's been rooted bottom of the Premier League all season long. And for me, the amount of shots that you end up facing, inevitably your stats are going to look worse than everybody else's. But for me, this is about being smarter than everyone else, a bit like what Arsenal was when it came to Aaron Ramsdale, who got relegated with Sheffield United. Even me, I was balking at the field. I was like, what have they done here? But they saw the potential in the goalkeeper, past all the stats, and they brought him in, and look how good he went on to be for Arsenal. Look how good he is with his feet for Arsenal. And someone like Bazunu will bring that to Tottenham, Jack. For me, I think he's an upgrade on where Hugo Lloris is right now, and he's an upgrade on Fraser Forrester. This guy, you ask any Ireland fan out there, he is an unbelievable shot stopper. He has the #1 jersey over Caoimhín Kelleher for a reason. And that's not just because of his distribution. We've been linked with Caoimhín Kelleher, but Bazunu is a miles better shot stopper than someone like Caoimhín Kelleher. And Tottenham have actually been interested in Bazunu since he was 16 years of age, before he made that move to Man City. They've sort of been interested the whole way since. And when I look at Bazunu, I think he is a very good shot stopper, Jack. He's got very good reflexes as well. He's just playing in a poor Southampton team. But most, you look at it here at Meslier, save percentage, not much in it. Clean sheets, 1 in it. And he's playing in a team rooted at the bottom of the Premier League. But you look at Bazunu, we need a plan B sometimes when it comes to playing our football. And even with Ange Postecoglou coming in, we're still going to look to sort of play through the back. And we are going to get pressed. So, how many times we've seen the ball being put back to Hugo Lloris and he pumps it 80 yards up in the air and expects Harry Kane to deal with it. Bazunu gives you that option where it's like what we were talking a bit about Bijlou when it came to Arne Slot, what his keeper offers. Someone who can ping that ball into the winger's chest, into the striker's chest. Someone that can also throw it out that far as well, straight into their chest. Bazunu is your guy. You're talking about a modern goalkeeper, one for the future, who is well-rounded in all aspects of the game in terms of shot stopping and distribution. Bazunu is your guy. Now, I know some people are going to say 21, a bit young. But this is the way we're going at Tottenham Hotspur. You look at a lot of the recruitment, it's been 25 or under, and you want a young, hungry team, who has potential of being best in their class when they're a bit older. Bazunu is that. And for me, I'd rather pay the small amount that it's going to get to cost to get him in now than the 80, 90 million that's going to require in 3, 4, 5 years' time. For me, Bazunu is a brilliant goalkeeper and one that I definitely think would improve Tottenham. Highlight, because I know people are going to say, oh, Dave, you're just sticking up for your fellow countryman because he's Irish. Do not forget, I was honest about Matt Doherty the entire time he was here. Even I had other people telling me how good Matt Doherty is, and I told you all how crap he is. So I don't want people to say it's just because he's Irish.
I think he's one of the most talented goalkeepers in his class. You're absolutely spot on about that. And maybe there's no questioning that, right? He is probably the most talented goalkeeper in sort of his age group. But is it maybe too soon, Kieran, for 21-year-old who just really had his first sort of season in the Premier League? Like Dave said, he is a good shot stopper at heart, but just because he was, being put under pressure by being played, in a relegation side, at times, he didn't exactly pull out maybe the saves that were needed in order to keep them up, maybe in certain games. Do you feel like he can make that transition to Spurs, or is David Raya maybe a much better choice?
Look, for me, if you're talking longevity, Bazunu's a better option. But, and there is a but for me, personally, I feel like Bazunu needs 1 or 2 more years to be that keeper and that guy, that everyone wants in goal. Maybe he won't need it, but after this season, it feels like, okay, maybe just needs a year or 2 to adjust. Whereas right now, we need someone that can just step in and do it now. And we can sit here and say that Southampton's defense has been bad unless we organise and make some signings this season. In this transfer window, our defense is going to be awful as well, and that that doesn't help Bazunu too much if he was the one to come in. So I feel like, it's a weird one. I feel like we actually should have signed Bazunu last season or the season before,
right?
And maybe instead of Forster, brought in someone who could kind of come in and do the next 2 or 3 years while Bazunu was developing, or maybe we loaned him else somewhere for that experience. So it's a weird one. It's whether you want to take that risk that he needs a season more or so, or whether you would just prefer to get someone in right now and then worry about getting another young goalkeeper in a couple of years from now.
Center backs were mentioned a few times. Bella Kotchap and Salisu were over at Southampton. They're very young, quite talented. Salisu, I would say, is more of a dominant center back, both in the air and on the ground, and sort of the stats do reflect that. Whereas Bella Kotchap does seem to be better on the ball and in possession. So which one actually sounds more useful to Spurs? What would you say, Kieran?
Well, look, I think both of them fit Spurs.
I like them both.
Yeah, honestly, this is the thing, right? You're picking between 2 good, defenders and two very promising defenders. It just depends on what you prefer more. I think after watching Eric Dyer back off and back off and back off, personally, I would prefer a defender that goes in and make a tackle. But
Yeah.
if we're playing a back four and you've got Romero next to them and you've got two defenders just going out and crunching players, is that what you want? So there's a bit of a toss up there. Personally, look, I would lean towards Salisu just because I've seen more of him and he's got more experience. And Romero suddenly becomes injured when there's national games around. And yeah, then you've also kind of got to worry about potentially sendings off as well, which kind of happen a little bit more frequently as the years have kind of gone on with him. So I'd like someone like Salisu who's strong and aggressive, but I also wouldn't be too mad with Bella Kotchap either.
Salisu is left-footed while Bella Kotchap is right-footed, Dave. Which defender is better suited for what really Spurs need, but also bear in mind for what Cuti Romero needs?
Yeah, look, ideally you want a left footer on the left side, right? But throughout the existence of football, the majority of times, because left footers are rare, you majority have a right footer who plays on the left side of that defence. And I think when it comes to Salisu and Bella Kotchap, what one do I think complements Romero? Because look, let's be honest, they're an upgrade on everything else we have outside of Romero. I would go with Bella Kotchap, Jack. When I watch Salisu, I actually think he's very rash. He loves a red card, by the way. Let's not hide that fact. And I get what people are saying, that maybe he's a bit better on the ball. I think he's a bit erratic at times, if you want me to be brutally honest. And you cannot have him partnering Romero. It'll be an absolute disaster. What you need is someone that's more cool, calm, and collected. And for me, that's Bella Kotchap. You put him in beside Romero. You let Romero go and do all the slide tackle and everything else. Bella Kotchap's just there to sort of clear it up, pick up the loose pieces, and progress the ball. And for me, I really like what I see from Bella Kotchap. I think he's got a lot more composure about him than someone like a Salisu. If you want me to be brutally honest, on and off the ball. So for me, I would actually much rather Bella Kotchap. As soon as I set sights on him at Southampton, I really like what he was about. Whereas Salisu, again, I think he's one of these players where people talk about and they like and all that sort of stuff because he's left-footed and everything else. But I don't see it in the guy, to be honest.
Definitely, I agree with you on Bella Kotchap. I think he's really good on the ball, and that's probably what we need, maybe more in this team, because what Spurs have really lacked over the years are actually technically gifted center backs, on the ball that, you don't really, press like we've had with Longley to a degree. Like Longley was really useful because when he was pressed, he was able to just sort of get around it, make the right decisions, always look, cool and composed and be able to be, confident on it. And I think Bella Kotchap sort of, breathes sort of a similar, kind of composure about him. He looks almost like a center midfielder, the way that he even carries the ball, I would say. Salisu, I think, I agree with you, is probably not as good on the ball, maybe a bit less sort of technically gifted, but I think he is, better than maybe what some might say on the ball. But I agree with you. I think the red cards, we've had two experiences, if I'm not mistaken, with him with red cards. And I've seen some other moments at times where he has made sort of rash decisions. He's a very young defender still, and he's had a lot of experience in the Premier League. And that also maybe shouldn't be, shied away from. And I think he is going to go to some, big side because he is a talented player. Both of them are. So be interesting to see which one will go for. It looks like Kieran went for Salisu and Dave went for the likes of Bella Kotchap. I'm going to go for Bella Kotchap as well. Let us know in the comments down below, everybody, which of those two center backs you actually think are worth bringing into Spurs, or maybe none at all, but I think they're both quite talented.
Sorry, I just want to pose a question to you guys, right? When we had Toby and Jan, both of them would occasionally step forward and make tackles when needed and stick their foot in when needed, right? Obviously, Jan was more of, the stick your foot in guy in general, and Toby more the ball player. But do you think that Romero would be less rash and fly out less often if the person next to him wasn't someone like Dyer, who just constantly backed off, and was someone who also maybe stepped forward and made the tackle when needed? So I feel like sometimes Romero also has to compensate for who he's playing next to a little bit.
I don't completely subscribe to the theory that every sort of aggressive defender needs a calm and composed defender next to him that is going to be always a bit more composed, when he's making those sort of decisions. Because you look at Sergio Ramos and Pepe, I mean, they were absolutely some of the best defenders in the world, at times, and they were probably the two most aggressive defenders in the world, at the time as well. And they've formed a brilliant partnership. And even look at Romero with the likes of Otamendi. Like Otamendi, I don't believe was ever known as sort of a composed defender either. Like he was always, a bit rash and always made, sort of very sketchy tackles and is known for a bit of housery, that's for sure. And Romero formed a brilliant partnership with him in that Argentina team. So I think it is more to what you're saying is a defender that they just have confidence in, that they know is also a good defender, that also will make the right decision, that will be able to make, whether it's an aggressive tackle or not an aggressive tackle, they will make the right decisions and they will do it the right way. And that's what Romero needs. Another Southampton player that we need to take a look at is their midfielder, and he's definitely been there for a long time, and this is probably going to be the season he finally leaves. It is James Ward-Prowse, and definitely the big debate is sort of James Ward-Prowse or James Maddison, the battle of the English James midfielders, and one certainly can play a bit deeper, I feel like James Ward-Prowse. He can play sort of as a creative midfielder. He can also play, deeper right next to sort of a defensive destroyer, but I feel like James Maddison is also maybe more of an excellent or elite sort of, number 10, whereas James Ward-Prowse can sort of kind of, in a way, plug in different areas and just prove to be kind of a very useful type of guy. But what do we need? Maybe I'll start with you, Dave, because I feel like, you like James Ward-Prowse. Is he useful to Spurs? Is he maybe, in fact, more useful to Spurs than what James Maddison would be?
Look, for me, if you're showing serial ambition, I think you bring in both, if you want me to be brutally honest. When I look at someone like a Ward-Prowse, you've got to sort of put his numbers and that into context, but also the sort of player he is. For me, look, you can clearly tell by his stats, he's not going to be one of them that sort of, gets stuck in. Now, he can't do that, but he's more the guy that the person beside him, like a Højbjerg, gets stuck in and gives the ball to someone like Ward-Prowse. With Ward-Prowse, you've got a number of options. So we'll start with him playing in a deeper role. What we need someone back there is someone that can pick up that ball, get it out their feet, and move it left, move it right, put it in over the top, and just give us a different variety of passing range in that midfield. You look at Tottenham, why do so many people press us? Because we don't have anyone in the back line can have that passing range. Don't have the goalkeeper that can do it. But also, you look at Bentico, he's good at holding on to the ball and stuff like that. But he's not a guy that can spray 60, 70, 80-yard balls. We miss that in our midfield. Højbjerg and Skip don't have it. So Ward-Prowse gives you that different option. You can play him as a deep lion playmaker that can open up the field from further back. It gives us an option that we don't currently have in midfield. Okay, I think, look, he's brilliant on set pieces as well. But, Jack, this is a guy that has also played in the cam role this year for Southampton. Yeah. And his numbers actually got better. I think 3 goals, 1 assist in 9 games as a cam. So, again, he can fill in that role. He's got a good long-range shot on him. He can score from distance, but he's also, again, good passing range, a good manipulator of the ball. And for me, I think we're missing a trick if we don't go and get this guy from Southampton, because he gives you cover in all areas, but he gives you different options. He gives you, as a passer of the ball, that basically you can become unpressable then, because even if they do try and press, you get him to drop into position to receive it and start getting you out of that press. We haven't had that this year. So I think James Ward-Prowse definitely offers that. And also, people say, oh, well, his numbers could be better. Compare his numbers to James Maddison, but compare the teams they're playing. Southampton haven't had a striker all season long that can score a goal. You look at James Maddison, he's had Harvey Barnes, he's had Iheanacho, Daka, Vardy, people like that to put them away. So obviously, when you've got better players that you're providing, they put them away. That makes your numbers better. So for me, I think we're missing a trick with James Ward-Prowse, and he offers me a lot of different options that we don't have in the Spurs team, and I'd bring him in here.
Is Ward-Prowse more creative from open play than we give him credit for, Kieran?
Well, depends on who you ask. If you ask,
that's from you.
If you ask Twitter, you'll get a variation of responses. Look, I think he's a bit more creative from open play than people suggest. Although I do think a lot of his creativity comes from dead ball situations. If you look statistically at the chances he's creating, those shot creating actions, they are very good. And the pass into the final third, they are very good. But when you break them down, a lot of it is from dead ball situations, whether he free kicks, corners and stuff. Now, that isn't the sole and only thing he's good at, but I think obviously, like I said, that's where a lot of his creativity comes from. He is very good still in open play. But I don't know. He's got 3 years left on his deal, and he's the captain of Southampton. He's come through their academy. Will they want to let him go easy? I think they'll probably try and hold on to him as much as they can, to try and bounce straight back up, because I think he's going to be one of their key players this year in the Championship coming up if they can keep hold of him. So I don't know. If you were asked me, Ward-Prowse or Maddison, I'd probably lean towards Maddison, purely because I think James Ward-Prowse, you'd probably be looking at 40-odd plus million anyway to try and prize him away from Southampton. But just purely because of the amount of years he's got left and the importance. Whereas Maddison, a year left, Leicester in Championship, they might just try and take that money now, so they can maybe re-sign a few other players, because they do have contracts running out at Leicester.
The fact that James Ward-Prowse is 28 does give me a little bit of pause, because it feels like he could still be, developing into sort of his best self, but I feel like we are seeing what sort of James Ward-Prowse is. And I think Dave raised a very good point about the teammates that he does have. And I've always said that about Southampton. I think they've always been destined to go down, and that actually I think Hasenhüttl, in fact, was sort of keeping them up for some time with some of the players that they had sort of at their disposal. And he makes a good point, right? James Ward-Prowse, who has he really had to sort of like play balls over the top to, other than like Che Adams and Danny Ings? Like, it still is, not really the best to really choose from when you think about it, when it comes to the Premier League standard that we usually are used to. And so I feel like, James Ward-Prowse, if maybe given better players around him, could probably show to be a much better player than we saw maybe give him credit for, or he could actually show that he is maybe more of a mid-table sort of standard. But I feel like he is, maybe a bit underrated in at least my books. And there is that thing. He is absolutely lethal from a set piece. And if anybody gets fouled outside of the penalty area, I think it's just pretty much a layup, for him. It really is. So I am kind of thinking, and also he likes, that term, the golf term for layup. So I think he certainly would be a guy worth bringing in, actually. And I actually am going to go a bit controversial here. I'm going to join Dave's side. I think I would rather go after James Ward-Prowse if he were cheaper than James Maddison. If he ended up being a bit cheaper, I think I would go after him. But James Maddison certainly could be one that you get into a big sort of bidding war with. Whereas with James Ward-Prowse, I'd be curious if there really is going to be a bidding war, for that guy. Maybe you could actually get him for a little bit cheaper than some might, expect. But I think we'll leave it there, though, guys. And I think we went through a lot of relegation players, and a few of them we did say yes to. So hopefully Ange Postecoglou, but everybody down below, give us your comments on which sort of players you feel like maybe we left out, could have given more attention to, or maybe you felt like we're sort of maybe missing a bit of, extra good points, or, extra good evidence when it comes to it. So let us know down below, everybody, your thoughts on relegation players maybe are worth bringing into Spurs. Hit that like button on the way out, and we will be seeing you. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Everywhere we go.